Great to be here. I'd like to introduce our panelists. First we have on the right, my right, we have Cecilia Ziniti, who's the co-founder and CEO of GCAI, a great portfolio company for Fellows Fund. Alex Lee, co-founder and CEO at Truewind, also a wonderful company. And Nico, co-founder and CEO at Corgi Insurance. And I have a few questions that I've prepared. That's why I'm looking at my phone. But I'm going to try to let the panelists do the talking because they're the people that we're here to listen to. So I'll start with a general question, maybe starting with Cecilia and going right to left. Could you please introduce yourself and your company?
Sure. I'm Cecilia Ziniti, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of GCAI, which is legal AI for companies. Our initial customers are in-house lawyers. So if you've worked at Google or any of these tech companies, the lawyers that you work with every day, those are our customers. We serve more than 700 companies, ranging from Webflow and Hitachi to Logitech to Williams-Sonoma and Duolingo. So been a great example, I think, of what we've talked about today around AI has allowed, particularly B2B, but also B2C companies to just leapfrog existing SaaS. So been super fun. Met Alex and the Fellows Fund and thought, you know what, like this engineering function and really having folks from him on your side, you want that. So had a great experience and excited to dive deep technically. I also, fun fact, used to manage the patent program at Yahoo. So both JC and others, actually, I helped get their patents. And then eventually was so inspired, I got patents of my own later at Cruise. So I do have real AI cred, although I'm the non-technical founder. So let's go.
Great intro. Glad to be here. My name is Alex. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO at Truewind. We're a Series A company building AI for accountants. So we sell directly to in-house corporate accountants as well as accounting firms. We're working with some of the largest accounting firms in the country. Eisner Amper and Frank Rimerman are both some of the top 100 accounting firms. Met Alex Ren. I think you guys were still in Fund 1 at the time. This was YC Winter 23, the first post-ChatGPT YC batch. I think at the time it was like 30-40% of the batch were AI companies. I'm pretty sure it's 99% now. But great to be here.
Hi, I'm Nico. I'm the CEO of Corgi, and we're a financial infrastructure company focused mostly on insurance. We are like a fully verticalized 50-state insurance carrier and reinsurance company, so know quite a bit about financial infrastructure. Yeah.
Great. Well, I think actually I should mention that the theme of our panel is how AI native founders transformed core workflows. And so I'll start with a very general question around that. What has generative AI enabled in your domain that was impossible a few years ago? Would it have been possible to start your company, say, 5 years ago? Maybe let's start with Nico.
Yeah, so in our case, kind of our data primitive in insurance is natural language. So insurance is a bit different from other areas of financial services in a couple ways. So like if you compare it to where we've seen good companies in the past, like payment processing, credit cards, banking, kind of the core technology that all of those services use is a general ledger that consists of a lot of transactions happening very quickly. And those transactions tend to be numbers. In insurance, what we sell is a 100-page contract. It's called a policy. And the work that an insurance company has is turning that policy into math. And that's something that previously used to require quite a lot of like humans in the loop. Our average competitor employs maybe 50,000 people or more that kind of work to do those tasks. So our company's kind of like basic belief is that large language models can act as labor replacements for like a wide variety of these kind of like vertical workflows. So I guess the short answer is like most of what we do would not have been possible before generative AI, and that's because like insurance is kind of the biggest words-based industry at a time when computers are getting quite good at using language.
Mine's pretty simple. The ACA spec file was written back in the 1960s or 70s, and it really constrained the amount of information in your bank statement. Like just think about the last time you opened up your bank account or your credit card. and you're trying to figure out what that $97 or $500 purchase is, depending on what your spending levels are. And it's not very, very clear, right? Random hashtags, random characters, nothing really means anything. And so what a human needs to do is be able to interpret what that text is. But even then, let's say you run a software company, you buy some cups. I run your neighborhood Blue Bottle. I buy the same cups. The banking transaction might say exactly the same thing, but the purpose of the purchase was entirely different. For the Blue Bottle shop, it's cost of goods sold. For software, it's office supplies. And that requires human intuition, human understanding. Obviously, with LLMs and AI, that's something that technology cannot handle.
Yeah, so to the narrow question, could my company exist before AI? Absolutely not. Like, so lawyers, we are basically large language models, right? So starting at age 5, you go to kindergarten through to law school at 25 years old. You've consumed, I think I looked at my Grammarly and I wrote 23 million words in the last 3 years. Like lawyers, we are just a word profession. So if insurance is selling claim documents, which are contracts, lawyers were reading them. So the core idea that LLMs were a step function change, it's actually like part of the origin story of the company. So I was at Replit as the general counsel and had access to a pre-ChatGPT version of GPT. Hard to believe now, but at the time, OpenAI was selling us really hard. They're like, oh my God, you should use AI, for coding. And eventually, obviously, got there and Amjad, and they're doing very well now. But the core idea that we have this capability that we didn't have before, how do you wield it? How do you have it at the application layer? So transforming core workflows, we've done John Henry challenges. So remember like the book or whatever, where it's like, there's the human and the machine chopping wood and like the human wins and then dies. Okay, like you don't want that. But the core idea that machines are faster, like literally, all right, pull up the Zoom terms of use on your phone. How does it terminate? Even the fastest lawyer is going to take 5 minutes to do that. Our product does it in 0.5 seconds. And so how to take that amplification and put it in the hands of the people with the judgment, that was the reason for being for the company. And I think the three of us in the prep and whatever said, okay, all of us have these very strong points of view on our industry. I do, and being able to take that strong point of view and translating it to software, that's been the job.
Great. Thank you for the answers. And I'd like to encourage the panelists to riff on each other's answers, even ask each other questions if it seems relevant. Let's make this a real discussion. And I'll try to leave a few minutes at the end for questions from the audience. But moving on, there's a saying rather rude that, if you're not the product, then you're the customer. And one thing that I learned when I was working at Amazon is Amazon always talks about customers more than it talks about users. Of course, Amazon cares about its users, but customers and users are not the same thing. So my question for you is, who are your users versus who are your customers? And are they the same or different? Do they have similar or different priorities? Maybe Cecilia?
Yeah, so I spent 4 years at Amazon, and customer obsession is like it's a foundation for our company. And I was so lucky that I was the ICP, right? So I was a general counsel for 10 years, a lawyer for almost 20. And literally the thing I tell the team is like, we ain't selling software that I would not buy myself. It has to be that good. And, others have taken a different approach, right? It's like a meme that, NetSuite or whatever sells to one person. And it's so sad, the actual accounts payable manager that has to use it because it's like a terrible experience. I literally had a customer this week tell us, we're looking for the iPhone. Like with AI adoption, it's such a new way of working that design, and now the buzzword is taste, and other things matter. But for us, our customer and user have been largely the same, and it's something that, in the VC kind of in pitching the company, it's been a strength, but I realize that won't always be the case. So right now, our bread and butter is companies between 3 and 20 lawyers at the company, which gets you to some pretty big companies, right? Like, Duolingo serves however many million users with like a 7-person legal team. And so that's been helpful. I think increasingly divorcing the customer from the user, you get some interesting incentives. You can chase revenue harder that way, I think. But that just hasn't been our approach today.
Is there a review portion where like the junior lawyers are doing work versus the senior lawyers are reviewing work and having to balance between the two?
Yeah, that's right. So like thinking about like at smaller companies, the general counsel, just like a CFO at a smaller company, still does some legal work. At huge companies, they don't anymore. But I would say the work that's being replaced is absolutely more at the junior levels. And like I don't say this, to customer audiences that often, but are we reducing headcount? Absolutely. And we see this in code too. My co-founder's like, I ain't hiring interns. Cursor is way better.
This is being recorded.
I know, right? It's true. So sorry, future interns. You're going to be interns in go-to-market.
I'll keep mine brief because it replicates everything Cecilia said. In the accounting space, our user is the accountant. Our customer, usually it's someone a little bit more senior, whether it's a senior accountant, a controller, or CFO, depending on the size of the company. You said 3 to 20 lawyers. We say 3 to 10 accountants. We haven't figured out the higher end of that yet. So I won't add anything else there.
Yeah, well, the thing is, what's nice about that as a go-to-market is that, you know, the ultimate task of doing the lawyering for someone on a 15-person team is not that different from a huge company. And so by building a product that the smaller teams like, I personally have just done that. I think because you don't have the risk you mentioned of splitting that thing up of the buyer and the user. I don't know what's been your experience, but.
Yeah, I think that in very regulated industries, if you're taking the approach rather than selling into the industry of like becoming the service provider, I think there's kind of a third party that's very interesting, which is regulators. And a huge amount of our time is spent catering to regulators. And furthermore, the product we sell is like B2B, and we're just the infrastructure provider, and they're selling it to someone else. So I think like when I think of the people that like we spend a lot of time interfacing with, like regulators are probably like the number 2, right after who I consider to be our customers, which are the businesses that are selling our insurance ultimately. And I don't know. I think like it becomes more about the flow of information, which is something that large language models are particularly good at, more so than thinking about customer bases, at least within like our kind of niche of financial infrastructure. So like, yeah, I don't know if I'd call regulators the user or the buyer, but they're for sure watching over our shoulder at all times.
I mean, it's interesting. I actually, funny enough, my family runs an Airbnb in Santa Cruz, and we were debating who to pick for like our property manager. And the people that we went with said exactly what you said. They're like, we have 3 sets of customers. I'm like, what are you talking about? They're like, you, the owner of the property, the Airbnb renters, and then the neighbors and the city. And I was like, what are you talking about? They're like, the biggest value add you can have as an Airbnb property manager is avoiding the neighbors freaking out at you. And that surprised me. So like, I guess it actually makes some sense. It's a like really good parallel because if you're selling insurance, like the regulator is there, you're like your boss, kind of.
Yeah, and funnily enough, we sell to property managers a lot, so they're selling our stuff to tenants, and it's just a whole like I don't know. I think that like if a market is very big and if you're an infrastructure provider, it's a bit like asking.
Stripe or something.
Yeah.
It's so funny because like we have this debate at Stripe. Or a debate about Stripe. Does anybody here work at Stripe? Okay, good. We're like, how did they get so big? It's so annoying to use. It's like the worst. But then I'm like, well, you kind of need to make money, so.
Yeah, like I feel like I don't want to say half our job, but like at least like a third of our job is just like dealing with very annoying regulators that want like something different every single day. And yeah, not the user or the buyer, but someone to someone to keep happy for sure.
Wow, thank you. I'm really glad that question provoked a discussion between the panelists, and really interesting that the discussion broadened out from users and buyers to stakeholders in general. And that's a topic that may come up in answers to future questions. But to follow up on users versus customers or buyers, what are some quirks about your users and your customers, and how do you build specifically for your particular users and customers? And maybe even there are some entertaining anecdotes here.
I can start from like a business model standpoint. Selling to law firms and accounting firms, selling software to them traditionally doesn't make sense. Software is supposed to make things more streamlined, spend less time on things, and it goes against the billable hours model of these industries. Now, I think different from law firms is accounting firms are actively switching to a fixed fee model. Like that's a wave throughout the entire industry. With grain of salt because they've been talking about it for a long time, but it does seem like it's picking up momentum. Every single one of these conferences I go to, all the accounting firms are talking about switching to fixed fee because of the pressures in competition. You don't really see that when you sell to in-house. I assume that's one of the reasons why you started going in-house.
Amen. Yes. Yeah. So basically, like a quirk. If the question was quirk about our users, I think Alex or our users share this. Like the incentive to be more efficient when you bill by the hour just isn't there, and there's a lot of fear. And no one's going to tell you they're scared. But they're just going to be like, I call them eagle eye, where like you'll do a demo for somebody and like, oh, it's wrong, it hallucinated there. And I'm like, well, okay, but if your intern got something wrong, or you're like, you're fired. They do like 99 calculations, the 100th is wrong, okay, get out of here. Like, no, that's not the case. And so a lot of what we've been doing is like really just educating and going on adoption, and then to your point, going for in-house. So for us, the most fun stories is like we get people with this just like raw emotion about AI where they're like, I was able to mark up an asset purchase agreement in half an hour instead of 4 hours. I went home and I went and saw my kids, play or something. And people literally tell that. We get a story like that almost every day at this point. And so like tapping into this like make me better, that's the other fun quirk. So I'm a lawyer. We're probably high achieving engineers. Like you're used to getting gold stars on tests. You've probably been in school. You've probably had people tell you how smart you are all the time, right? And so like our users kind of like gold stars. So we teach a class and we send them a certificate, and you get like 15-year lawyers that are like so proud. And so like stuff like that, of like the point that was made on the earlier panel that like we're all still basically human, like that kind of is what I'm seeing is the most kind of interesting about our user base. Also super skeptical, right? Like lawyers kind of hate everything. And so if you can actually make the software like somewhat delightful, you'll be successful. And that's what we've done.
One thing I'll add is, as much as we always aim for speed and efficiency in our customer base, while that's important, is nowhere near as important as getting accuracy right, having transparency. So our early design principle was, let's get the job done and just push it through. And that black box feeling was very intimidating to our customers. So it completely changed the ethos of our product design. Everything centers around accuracy and transparency, showing them what it is. And by doing that, it kind of earns us the right to help speed things up. Then they use it more. Then they're asking us to just approve it, pre-approve it without them having to touch it. That was I don't know so much a quirk, but a learning as to what works for our customers.
I think when we started at first, I kind of had the wrong idea. I thought that everyone loved insurance as much as I do, which turns out they don't. And,
I don't know how you started on that baseline, man.
So I thought people wanted email notifications like you're making so much money, you're so compliant. I thought they wanted ka-ching. I thought they wanted nice ramp dashboard going. It turns out they don't want any of that. They just don't want to think about it. They want to be compliant. They want to be covered. And in the case of our channel partners, they want to make money. But they don't want anything to do with any work or notification or anything like that. So our product over time has actually shifted. Our customers, I don't think they even really care what goes on under the hood or that we're an AI company or anything like that. Our pitch has kind of transitioned over time to most of our channel partners to agentic compliance monitoring, where they add our bot account to whatever system of record or ERP or vertical software provider they're using. And then we just embed insurance and make them a lot of money and make them compliant. And yeah, ever since we switched to that, it turns out people like it a lot more. So I think, at least in our case, a delightful product experience is that they kind of forget that they have us, unless their check is a little late from the bank being closed on Monday or something.
Thank you for the answer. It's fascinating, the differences between companies and user populations. And it's really interesting, Cecilia, you mentioned how lawyers get so happy when they get a gold star. And Alex, you mentioned the importance of design, because the next question that I I have here is asking, how do you think about design? How do you think about user interfaces? And maybe more broadly, what's the balance of importance between functionality versus coolness and attractiveness and other things which are important to consumers, and how important are they in your businesses?
Yeah, so everybody's going to have a different point of view on this, but for us, ChatGPT is the bar. Like a lot of lawyers use ChatGPT. And so what's been nice for us is that it really forces us to be very usable, to be very beautiful. Because ultimately, and to me, it's also showing how much users do actually care about that. Like the accuracy for our user is our edge, but the fact that we're competing with ChatGPT and not in our case, the incumbents, which are called Lexis and Westlaw, who have not revved their products since the mid 80s. And it's literally like the bar is in the basement for usability, right? And I'm sorry, I love them. They have good data, et cetera. Like, be a kind founder, whatever. But like the point is like when you have a consumer product that's almost as good, it's just like what they talked about with the consumer panel. You have to add a layer that's specific to your user. In our case, it's lawyers. So our initial MVP was literally just providing citations. So little example for you, if you upload a contract to ChatGPT, which probably most of you have statistically, a lease or an insurance policy or random stuff you got to sign. Okay, ChatGPT will do a basic answer. How does this contract terminate? It'll terminate for breach. Fine. For our users, for a lawyer, that is not good enough. That is not why you make the big bucks. The real answer is the contract terminates for breach with 60 days notice with a cure period. For material breach, 60 days notice, cure period per section 8.3. By the way, here's section 8.3 so you can verify. And so that delta of like being fit for the user, that's where I would say we focus the most. But the usability is kind of table stakes. Otherwise, our people wouldn't use us. And we're seeing that with other legal AI solutions from the incumbents where they're not clearing that ChatGPT bar and they are not selling very much because of it.
When you say beautiful, how do you think about the difference between like functionality, UX, UI? Like what do you find your customers actually care about?
Yeah, so for us, we get a lot, to the discussion yesterday, we get a lot from like prompting and from the core AI answers and tone being better. Now, you could say, well, okay, your users could just prompt better or they could like create their own GPTs. There ain't no lawyer making their own GPT. Like there's maybe 0.5%, but like we can achieve that like by giving them that functionality in a chat-based way, we can make it so much more accessible. In terms of feature race, it is tough. Like we're definitely being compared with others, and in our space, the big one is Harvey. We win deals against Harvey all the time, and they have raised 800 million, many multiples of what we've raised, and have 400 people, and we have 25. And so to me, that says that really focusing the UX and not a feature race is going to be better. That being said, like, do we lose deals because of functionality? Sometimes.
It's a loaded question, Charles, and I could probably give a whole hour talk on it. I'll try to keep it 30 seconds. I think thinking beyond, so I think in the legal space, the whole chat interface makes a lot of sense for what you're doing. It actually doesn't make much sense in the accounting space. So this is one area where from a product design, it really deviates.
Oh, 1,000%. I'm like, why is there not an AI in Excel? What the hell? Is that your product? I don't know if it's in Excel.
That's someone else, I'm sure.
Okay, good.
But for us, the AI lives behind the scenes and making sure your data gets organized so you actually get your debits and credits right to where it is today. And then once you get those right, what is the interface to the user? How do you delight them? So that's a whole nother layer of AI applications that we need to figure out. So yeah, we think a lot about what it takes to delight the customers, like giving them those wow moments in the way that ChatGPT, I remember the first time I used it, I think it was a Saturday, I ran out of the office like a kid in a candy store, and my wife was just chilling on the couch thinking I'd gone crazy. And like we want to create more of those moments for our accountants. Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, in our case, I think the overarching lesson that we've learned is that people do not want to spend time on insurance. So the less time they spend getting their policies, the less time they spend making sure they're compliant, the more satisfied they are. So I think that the utility comes from like kind of agentic workflows that make that happen very quickly. And it turns out that like if people no longer need to spend very much time doing that, they'll actually pay a premium for it. They'll pay, you know, maybe 10% or 20% more if they know that it's going to work. They know if they have a claim, they're going to be covered, and they don't want to waste like an hour of their time filling out a bunch of onerous documents.
Well, and it's so funny what you said actually reminds me of another Airbnb example, which is like, like the pool. There's a hot tub in my Airbnb, and we had to hire like a pool boy to take care of it. But I'm like, okay, would I really want to sell something that made the act of putting the chemicals into the pool like more delightful? No. You just want the pool to be clean, and you want to never think about it. You want to never hear about it. So yes, different business model, but good one.
Great, thank you. There's another aspect of running a company which is always really important, which is go-to-market. And maybe that's a newer term for advertising, marketing, public relations. And there's a saying that I heard a very long time ago: advertising is the price that a business has to pay for being ordinary. So,
Sorry, what?
advertising is the price that a business has to pay for being ordinary, for being like other businesses. And I really experienced this when I was working at Amazon, and Amazon really has no competitor for next day or second day delivery at a good price of almost anything that you could imagine buying. And so, especially when in the past when I was at Amazon, Amazon did very little advertising and marketing of its own services. There's a lot of people who buy advertising that is on the Amazon website. How do you think about advertising and marketing in general? Is it a worthwhile investment? Is it not something you need to do now, or what?
That's a new one because it's something we're starting to think about. For context, most of our go-to-market has been offline conferences, trade shows, and hosting in-person events. That works really well for our audience. They don't start the buying process on just a digital ad. They want to meet people in person. They want to see you at a conference, see you at a dinner, hear other people talk about you as well. So that's been all the early wins that we got has been to this point. Now, it gets a little bit hard because there is a very long tail of bad trade shows to be out there and figuring out where to draw the line. I love that quote. I think I'm going to start using it. But I think in the way that in every single business that you're in, there are ways to find like outsized alpha in your go-to-market motions. And I think even when it comes to advertising, you get the product marketing message on point. You hit them at the right time with the right material. I think those are the ways where you can get above the fold than just standard advertising. But directionally, I think I agree with what you're saying, and it takes a lot of hard work to be able to break out of that mold.
We don't do any advertising or like paid stuff. We have a go-to-market team. That's a more recent development, and I guess we don't do anything too extraordinary there. We call, we go to conferences. Yeah, we don't email yet, but maybe soon. I think, I don't know. I just think if you're gonna do something, you should like do it right. And we do work hard in what we do. Like if we go to conferences, we're there from 2 hours before, camped outside until like late in the night. If we're calling, we show up at 7 a.m. and we start calling, and then we call until 5 p.m. Then we switch to Hawaii until like 8, and then after that we switch to Guam until like 9 or 10, and then call it next day. So I don't know. I don't think our go-to-market is like anything extraordinary. I think our product's pretty good, and definitely, our company was a company started by 2 engineers, so I think there's some amount of bias, towards product and engineering. But yeah, I'm not sure I agree. Like I think there's some companies that do a really great job with go-to-market and with marketing, and maybe that's a really worthwhile investment for them. And my last company was a consumer company, and for sure we did gaming, and for sure we spent a lot on go-to-market. So I think it's just pretty circumstantial, but if the ROI is there, then and you can print money by spending money, then why not, I guess.
Yeah, so similar to these guys, like we have a great product and have spent almost nothing on outbound. But the thing that's different with AI now is literally that it's like a land grab moment. So lawyers are picking their AI, and, you know, we have incredible referrals. We have people that are like, oh my God, here's my spouse. You should use it. Oh, I spent a weekend in the Hamptons and raved about GCI all weekend. Here's 3 lawyers that you should demo for. And so we see a lot of that, and the conferences are great. And I'm super admire, I think there was the HubSpot Ventures guy here yesterday, that like HubSpot being a public company and huge, 80% of their new business still comes from referrals. And so I definitely am inspired by that. And Jeff Bezos not having a CMO and all this stuff. But marketing done right is really like keeping in touch with friends and just meeting more of them. So, you know, we just hired a CMO. She's amazing. And, you know, I told her, I said, okay, we're going to do, I was proud because we did a webinar, and on 24 hours notice, we had 95 customers show up, which was like pretty, felt super proud that we did that. And I told her that, and she's like, oh yeah, that's cool and all. How about 950? I was like, all right, let's go. And so this like really thinking big in this AI moment where this is like, when you think of when Google or Facebook ads first came out, there was like this siphoning where like there were these graphs of like how much people spent on print media advertising, and it just kind of like shoom went over, and the 2 bars like kind of like eventually Google surpassed. That's the moment that we're in now in AI. And so a little bit of well done marketing that's very in touch with the persona, I think is really helpful. The other thing too, like you have to find where your users live, and you know, maybe your users or your buyers are, you know, property managers or whoever. You as the founder, it's on you to figure out where your users hang out. In our case, our gold star loving lawyers, platform of choice is LinkedIn. So our LinkedIn content does incredibly well. Tried it on Twitter. Twitter is a lot of people sliding in my DMs for dates, and it is useless. And so that's just something that comes from being a founder. And I'm married, by the way, so whatever. But
Quick side question: do in-house corporate lawyers have T&E budget? Because like when I sell to accounting firms, they have T&E budget to go to conferences, but in-house corporate accountants a little harder.
yeah, you can get one a year, but
fair
a lot
enough.
of virtual events. We get a lot of virtual events, a
Yeah,
lot of
that's worked well for us
communities, a lot of
too.
Slack channels. The other thing is bar associations are pretty local, so it's pretty common for us to go to like the Association of Corporate Counsel Denver, you know, spa meetup or whatever, and we'll send somebody for things like that.
Yeah, fascinating. Now, we only have 10 minutes left, and I said I wanted to leave some time for audience questions, so I'm not going to be able to ask all the questions that I think would be really fascinating to hear. Let me go to one that may be a bit more technical. So are reasoning models and multi-step agentic flows, are they important for your company? And the reason I'm asking about those is that those can be really expensive in the terms of tokens that are consumed when you're calling the underlying large language models. So more broadly, is the cost of using the core AI models sustainable financially for your company? Is it significant? Is it not significant? And what do you think in the future as reasoning models and more complex agentic flows become more important?
So we spend a lot of money on multi-step stuff. It's pretty important. And I think we kind of internally have learned to divide it into kind of 2 groups. One is areas where it's not necessarily mission critical, where there's some tolerance for it messing up. Because our impression of a lot of the multi-stage or like very reasoning heavy tasks is that there's some percentage of time in which the non-deterministic flows mess up. And the technology is not quite there for something like payments, or if we're handling very critical compliance things. We don't want it to click send on an email that like could get us in a lot of trouble. So for things like that, we normally have reverted to having the agents be non-deterministic in the tasks where it's important for and mission critical for that kind of intelligence to be present, like if they need to enter a CAPTCHA, for example. But like we've reverted a lot of our architecture towards, for mission critical stuff, towards kind of old school methodology that's coordinated or orchestrated by multi-step non-deterministic like agents. So for example, let's say we have like a vertical software provider that we need to go into, and we really can't mess something up with the payments or the communication with the end stakeholders. What we'll do there is we'll have an agent maybe log in and be the bot account and click around a few times. But if we need to actually interface with anything payment related, we'll use a deterministic, like old school, like web scraping approach, and we'll have the agent kind of coordinate that. So like turns out that the late 2010s tech isn't worthless, and that having 100% accuracy is really good for certain things. But we just try to kind of separate like what's mission critical and has no tolerance for messing up with what can be messed up.
Part of my answer is going to be skating to where the puck is going. There's the things that we need now and what needs to be delivered immediately to win and satisfy our customers versus where do we see technology headed in 3, 6, 9, 12 months? And it's a hard balance, right? Like every day we have leads coming in, deals we want to close, and if you look at that ARR numbers, like you really want to hit that. But at the same time, things are changing so fast. One area that has been really interesting for us with some of these reasoning models is the onboarding part. When it comes to onboarding CFO software, especially for larger companies, it's not days or weeks, it's months. Like some of these companies are trying to onboard an FP&A solution and it's 12 months in and it's like up and running, but there's still onboarding. There's still work to be done. And we have found that we can onboard much faster with some of these new models coming to like that we're starting to leverage. So that's the only bit that I'll add on top of here.
Yeah, I think being multi-model, being able to leverage the right model for the job has been a big thing for us. Gemini is great for the long context window, but it's just like the hallucinations are just garbage and weird. And so like we couldn't use it. We ripped it out. Similarly, what is it? GPT-4o, really good at tables, which is like, okay, that's weird, but like our users want tables. So, okay, we use it for that. And that like constant tinkering, I think will be the state of play for a while. And so training the company and training our users to give feedback, training our engineering team to like follow vibes when they need to, but then also develop a rigorous eval. We talked about evals yesterday, but like as the leader in that environment, I would echo Alex that it's like you have to kind of figure out what's important and then figure out a way to move fast enough that you don't get lapped on those things.
I'm interested that you've all three given really interesting answers to the question, but you didn't address the financial aspect of the question. Maybe it's not important to you, or so is the cost of, in particular, using these frontier models? You mentioned Gemini 2.5, you mentioned ChatGPT 4.0, which was frontier until recently. Is that a really significant cost of doing business, or is it like, Alex, like you were saying, you're skating to where the puck will be, the models are getting cheaper every month, it's really not a top of mind consideration?
So since our venture capitalist is on the panel, I'm going to say it's a top of mind consideration. I'd actually love to hear your take on it. Like high level, our view is models are getting cheaper. That doesn't give us a right to just be lazy about it. Like yes, being funded is great. Models are come cheaper is great, but we're still doing our part to make sure we always keep an eye on it. And I always hear from my CTO when we get a bill that's larger than we expect. And so we do a lot of optimization on our side. But then the flip side of it is I think about we started in 2023. Remember those days when you're doing fine tuning and whatever it is that you fine tune 3 months later, it was rendered completely pointless because OpenAI came out with something new. So it's a balancing act on that front. So I think the short answer is we do our part because we need to be good stewards of capital. But at the same time, we do need to be very creative, running experiments to get that land grab. I think that was a yes, no, maybe so answer.
I mean, I'm just gonna say I don't really care about the cost. Like, it's not so high. We have really healthy margins. It does come up for us. We launched a contract redlining capability, and every single query, we're sending the entire contract, which is different from our other modality. And that one, instead of like 90% margins, we have like 50. So like I felt okay about it. I do think we're building a tool that we're calling Contracts Nirvana, like that's the internal term, but basically the ability to query all your contracts. So have a AI natural language queries over 1 million contracts, which it turns out pre-AI, the ML stuff does not actually do well unless you've painstakingly tagged. So fun, you asked about stories. I talked with a paralegal at a company and I said, oh, look, your contract database is like super organized. And she's like, oh, it's easy. Friday is my tagging day. I'm like, oh my God, like that is not a 2025 task. So anyways, the cost of doing that, like it is something we're aware of, but we're going to be incorporating it in the business model of like, okay, if you want to query 1 million contracts, it's X price versus, 5 to 10 in more of a productivity tool type of aspect.
I mean, I think the question is probably more relevant for edge cases because it is oftentimes more expensive to use a model for multi-step reasoning than it is to hire a human, particularly if you hire like an offshore human. But I think the benefit isn't necessarily in cost reduction. Like we'll pay a premium to have a model doing it because then it will be more reliable. But if it's like a one-off task, then it's probably better to just do it manually. So in our case, we're not really thinking about cost necessarily, but I think as engineers, there's a big tendency to like over automate. And Elon Musk says like the last step is automating, not the first step. So like I think like for like one-off little things is probably and at first I think we had a problem where we were trying to automate everything, but there's for sure some things where like it's better to have a human do it, but it's not so much for cost reasons.
Well, we're running out of time. Maybe we have run out of time, but I'd like to take a question from the audience. So if anyone has a particularly burning question, could you please just come forward and ask the question or stand up? Yeah.
I think Gabriel held the 1 minute sign 3 minutes ago.
Yeah, on the attorney side, like we are, and the reason is that we show the citation. So what I say is like, okay, maybe the AI will hallucinate whatever it said, and so the footnote will not stand for the proposition for which it was cited. But the human analogy here does a ton of work because you're like, all right, it misread this. A human might do the same. You, the attorney, have the judgment to check the thing. So in this case, the fact that there's all these court cases where people are using ChatGPT is really good for us because ultimately the accuracy, we do a whole bunch of stuff. We have built our own RAG framework. We chunk documents. We do a whole bunch of technical stuff that increases it, but it will never be 100%. On the accounting side, that's tougher because the number is either right or wrong. On the legal side, you get a little bit more, it's a little more judgment, but similar.
Yeah, on our side, we've hit in the low 90s% in accuracy. We could have done a lot more to drive that up, but instead we've been investing more on how do we design the workflow to create more transparency. So a confidence score, a audit trail. With that type of information, our customers suddenly feel very comfortable just being able to review and continue moving forward. So we haven't invested more to try to get out to the high 90s. I think that's more of like a 2026 thing for us.
There's still some things that we have that models like for sure like can't do, like payments are an example. If someone comes out with an agentic payment company, that's a great startup to do. We would be a customer, but we're kind of just betting on models getting better over time.
There's someone in the back.
Yeah, I have a question about kind of your experience going from maybe idea to landing a first client, a customer. How do you guys balance kind of selling and building in that initial phase?
I mean, I would love to know more about your circumstance, but we don't have time for all that. So I would start off with when we got into YC, the first thing they told us was now is the time to call in every favor, to call in every chip, whatever it takes to start growing. And I think that's the mindset that has been ingrained into the company's DNA. Like at all points, we're always grabbing every opportunity that we can. So for us, early days, that meant me picking up the phone and just calling people that I knew who might need a bookkeeping or accounting. And then once I did that, then asking them for intros and then launching on LinkedIn. So I don't think it's a secret as to what the playbook is. It's just executing it very diligently?
I mean, I would actually not bifurcate building and selling. So in our case, like, I bootstrapped quite a lot from being the ICP. So again, it was like, is this something that I personally would use for my own work? You may not have that, but as close as you can get, do that. The other thing too is like, it's kind of like you can just do things where it's like in his case with accounting, like, okay, call every damn accountant you know. You can literally just go talk to an accountant, like, you know. And so if you're building something, if it's been more than a week and you haven't talked to a customer, you're doing it wrong. Like, and I would even say a day. Like, I look at my calendar and I make customer calls green in my calendar, green for money, but anyways, green. And so if my calendar's not green enough in a week, I fix it.
I think we had a little bit of a different experience in that we spent about a year and a half doing like regulatory work and automation work before we sold. So I don't know, your mileage may vary. Now we do a lot of selling, but yeah, I think, you know, it's important to get an increasing number of customers, but you can do that in a lot of different ways. And generally speaking, probably talking to customers is a good thing.
Kudos for that conviction for a year and a half to build. That's amazing. How did you identify the problem? I'm like so curious.
Oh, Charles, are we good on time or what?
I think
We're probably not, but we'll talk after.
We don't have
This is so
another
much-
session after this one, and I see people still sitting in seats, so I think this is a great learning opportunity. Certainly, I'm learning. Alex?
It was actually the question was, how did you have the conviction to build for a year and a half and know this problem existed?
Yeah, so I think in our case, I think PMF actually only came like after we started selling too, in the truest sense of the word. I don't know. I mean, we had a thesis. It's very expensive to do what we did. We had to like, you know, spend many tens of millions of dollars to like even get any regulatory structures in place that were relevant. And like, you know, you can't just, in financial services or financial infrastructure, you can't really just like sell things without that like infrastructure in place. So, I mean, looking at it now, I guess like, because there's like a big inflection point where suddenly the revenue starts going up. It looks like it's very easy and there was like a top-down thesis, but someone say something? Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think like sometimes you just get a good feeling, and sometimes you need to go with the feeling more than anything else, I guess.
Okay,
Alex,
great.
go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. So I don't have questions.
Well, I think we are over time, and we have, you know, thank you to the audience for the patience and listening and for the questions, and we will wrap it up now.
Yeah.
And most of all, thank you to the panelists.
Thank you.